you have a budget in the neighborhood of 1.7 million pesos for a new ride, chances are you're raring to go to the dealership to check out the latest SUV or crossover. And that's perfectly fine. But if you have no intention of driving on unpaved roads and you don't need a third row, then I plead to you to please save the sedan. What was once a staple in every garage is now on the brink of extinction. And while logic will tell you that getting a bigger, more practical vehicle at the same price seems to be the more sensible thing to do, this video aims to show you why listening to your heart isn't such a bad thing. And there's no better way to get my point across than with a sedan that can really steer your emotions. Something that's practical yet fun to drive. Something that's powerful yet won't bleed you dry at the gas pumps. Presenting the Kia Forte Turbo GT. When it comes to adding flair to what would otherwise be a normal sedan, there's a boundary that exists between being tasteful and chartering ricer territory. And after looking at this, I can really appreciate how careful the folks at Kia were not to cross that line. The GT badges are subtle. This car doesn't have to remind the world that it has a turbo under the hood with the use of unnecessary decal. There are red touches, but nothing sticks out like a sore thumb. You also get a body kit, but nothing like you'd see in the Fast and the Furious. At the front, you get a tiger nose grille as expected from any modern-day Kia. This is flanked by LED headlights with a DRL pattern that some might say was inspired by Porsche. The turn signals can be found at the bottom, while the projector fog lamps can be found on the side of the air down. Along the side, you get a strong shoulder line which extends all the way to the back, which really complements the sloping roofline. It almost looks like a fastback sedan. This also has heated, power folding side mirrors that's finished in gloss black, which I think is a really nice touch. The Kia Forte Turbo GT rolls on gorgeous 17-inch alloys which expose the front and rear disc brakes. Moving on to the back, you get this deck lid spoiler which hints towards the car's sporty nature. But aside from that, you get this rear diffuser with dual exhausts that don't only look good, they sound pretty good too. The rear taillights are LED, and I know they look gorgeous during the day, but they look even more stunning at night. What I'm not exactly a huge fan of would be the placement of the rear turn signals. They're a little too low for the car behind you to see, especially in bumper-to-bumper traffic. Opening the trunk can be done hands-free, which I think is a nifty feature, and it reveals 500 liters of cargo space. But in case that isn't enough, you can pull the rear seats down by pulling this lever. You see, owning a sedan, and a sporty one at that, doesn't have to translate to a penalty when it comes to practicality. Let's check out the rest of the interior. When you step in a car and you're greeted by aluminum sports pedals and a flat-bottom steering wheel, you're reminded that you're not in just any run-of-the-mill grocery getter. Now, I wouldn't call this the most premium, nor the most feature-packed interior in its class. And while there is some red stitching found here and there, the black seats, the door cards, the dashboard, and the headliner makes it feel kind of dark and monotone in here. A sunroof would have been a really nice touch, but despite all that, this is still a very pleasant place to be in. Starting with the seats, they're extremely comfortable, and there's enough adjustability to make you feel really snug. The tilt and telescopic steering wheel also helps you to find that perfect driving position. In terms of ergonomics, everything is well within reach and extremely intuitive. In fact, you'll be able to figure out how to operate everything in here, even if you're blindfolded. It's that intuitive because there's physical knobs and buttons for almost all the functions. And look, a mechanical park brake. There's just something really reassuring about not having to rely on wires and microchips to keep your car from rolling downhill. And besides, this is so satisfying. But this car isn't totally without tech, because you get a decent-sized infotainment system that comes standard with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It responds quick enough, and it also has a rear-view camera with active guidelines. Other niceties here include illuminated vanity mirrors, cruise control, and an auto-dimming rear view mirror. You also get dual-zone automatic climate control, and even the rear seat passengers get air vents. Space back there is quite adequate, as occupants will have inches to spare when it comes to knee and headroom. I also like how the rear seat isn't too upright. So is that enough to convince you to forget about that SUV or crossover that you've been eyeing? Well, maybe not. But that's only because we haven't taken this baby out on the road yet. So what are we waiting for? Let's go. Under the hood of the Kia Forte Turbo GT lies a 1.6-liter turbocharged gasoline direction engine which pumps out 201 horsepower and 265 Newton meters of torque. Now it's time to see what that actually feels like. Holy. Need I say more? This car is awesome. End of review, guys. Bye. On a serious note, that was a lot of fun, but that's not the only thing this car is good at. But before we get into all that, let's talk a little bit more about this car's power delivery, which you won't fully appreciate unless you rev it out. Now, don't get me wrong, this car is no slouch at low RPM. It's just a totally different beast once that needle goes past 4,000. And we have to give some of the credit to this car's transmission. It does a really good job in putting the power down. This comes with a 7-speed DCT. And I've been driving this for hours and so far there's no jerkiness. And it's not overheating either. Now you can pop this into S, which activates the car's sport mode and also allows you to use the paddle shifters. But you can also keep it on smart mode and the car will give in to your every desire. It can be economical when you're not beating it up, and it can also be a beast when you put your foot down. When it comes to the steering, it's weighted perfectly. It's not too light, nor is it exhausting. And turn-in is phenomenal. The car responds so quickly to the slightest steering input. And a car with a really quick steering ratio can sometimes be a negative if the suspension can't take it. But compared to the other variants, the GT has a multi-link suspension, so it always remains composed, especially around the bends. Now the suspension leans more towards the firm side, but it's by no means jarring. And the slightest compromise in comfort leads to so much gains in terms of handling. There's just no body roll, and that's a trade-off I'm willing to take any given day. But I understand that a sedan isn't all about spirited driving. There will be days where you won't be canyon carving, and on a really bad day, you might even have to chauffeur your mother-in-law. And on that day, the Forte can still be civilized and subtle, and provide a very comfortable ride. Now I'm not going to deny that SUVs, particularly crossovers, have come so close to driving like a car. But sometimes there's just no substitute for the real thing. Not to mention, sedans haven't stopped getting better. The Kia Forte Turbo GT can be yours for 1,650,000 pesos. And before you fall off your chair, I want to let you know that there are two other variants, the EX and LX, which both go below 1.2 million pesos. So you may be wondering, why is there such a huge difference? Well, the difference between this and the other variants aren't just cosmetic. We're talking brakes, transmission, suspension, and power plant. And while you can't put a price on that, just remember that the joy you get behind the wheel is priceless.